every single Wednesday at 7 p.m., I'm doing live shows. And I think that's today. So 7 p.m. Central Time, be here for a live show. I don't know what I'm doing yet. Maybe answering questions, maybe playing video games, but definitely having a good time. Hi everyone, my name is Chris, and welcome to Anime Debate. This week we're going to debate whether or not Dragon Ball Super is a good anime yet. Now I say yet because let's all be completely honest here, people. When Dragon Ball Super started, it was not a very good anime, and on top of that, the first two arcs were retreads of movies we've already seen. Can you say boring? I mean, yeah, they changed a couple things here and there, but for the most part, if you saw the movies, you already know what happens in the first, I think like 20 plus episodes, and that's kind of ridiculous. Just a little bit, in my opinion. Let's get deeper into what this series is about, though, for people that haven't seen Dragon Ball Super. So Dragon Ball Super is the follow-up series to Dragon Ball Z. Dragon Ball Z is a spastic fighting series where a kid named Goku, or an adult named Goku at this point, I guess, an adult named Goku goes on adventures where he has to fight, he has to train, he has to fight, he has to train, he has to fight, he has to train. That's pretty much what happens. That series, Dragon Ball Z, is a sequel series to Dragon Ball. Dragon Ball is another show where a kid named Goku, he's a kid now, yes, a kid named Goku goes on adventures, really, really long, awesome adventures with great plots, great threading, great storytelling, and a little bit of fighting here and there. When it gets towards the end, then it becomes a fighting series, which there's nothing wrong with that at all, but it just wasn't the same adventurous show that it was before. Now, in Dragon Ball Z, let's get back there, the show does become full-on fighting by the very end, where there's like pretty much 2 seasons where they're nothing but a tournament arc, where people get in trouble, people fight, people get helped, people get hurt, people die, people get wished back. It's just a crazy, crazy show. So Dragon Ball Super happens right after the events of the last arc of Dragon Ball Z. And it picks up at a point where we haven't seen our characters for a very long time. And they tell us about all the stuff they've been doing, and you're like, all right, cool, yeah, awesome. I don't really care about this, and where is the fighting? The show literally goes on for I think a couple of episodes with absolutely no fighting, which is kind of crazy for a series that people loved for the fighting. When the show came back, it had been like almost 20 years since the last time something had happened, and you're like, all right, cool, where is the fighting? But is there anything new gonna happen? And the answer is yes. But there's a lot of padding to this show. Meaning, like, I remember there was an episode when this new arc started. It's a intergalactic, interplanetary, whatever you want to call it, universal tournament, where literally the first half of the second episode of the arc was literally a recap of the first episode of the arc. And I'm like, what is happening in this show that you are literally retelling me everything I just saw? I get that you're explaining to another character, they're telling Krillin what on to catch him up, but we already saw that. Why are you making me watch that again for 8 minutes? Like the first half of a 22-minute show. What is happening? I was getting so frustrated with this show until the fight started. And you found out this show has much better fight pacing, meaning the fights don't take like 8 episodes. They can be finished up in 2, and I like that a lot more. I'll also say that there's a lot more humor and a lot more character development for this show, but it feels kind of weird because you're literally comparing it to the show that came before it, and the show that came before it didn't have a lot of great character development or a lot of great character moments, but this one gives you almost too much. If this was a different series, it wouldn't bother me as much. But this is Dragon Ball we're talking about, you know? Like the original Dragon Ball did a really good job with pacing and storyline and characters and development, but then Dragon Ball Z kicked off and it was a completely different show. Now Dragon Ball Super is happening, it's a completely different show. So it's like, I wanted the show that came before it, not the show that came before it, you know what I mean? And so that makes it a little bit frustrating to watch sometimes because it's just not what you expected. But if you just chill for a second and have some patience, you will get rewarded eventually. The show does decide to pick up at some other point and stop with all the padding. Like, I mean, the padding in this show is super ridiculous. They take entire, 10 minutes to tell really bad jokes. So in direct comparison to Dragon Ball Z, I can't say that I love the show as much. And at first I was kind of like, man, I don't know if I can watch this anymore. Like if this wasn't Dragon Ball related, I wouldn't be watching it at all. I would have cut it off a long time ago because it's just not what I expected. It's not my kind of like show. It's not the thing that I really dig. But then the show kicks into high gear with another arc, which I will not explain, which kind of retreads a story plot from another point in Dragon Ball Z, but they do it in such a way that you're like, oh, okay, I'm invested now. Oh yeah, let's do this. Let's dig in with a hot spoon into a bowl of porridge. Oh yeah. So ultimately, the question is Dragon Ball Super a good anime yet? And I'll say that finally, after 30 plus episodes of a lot of padding, a lot of weird humor, a lot of story development, a lot of character development that didn't expect to come from the show, and weird pacing, the show has finally decided to catch on and really get in its own stride. Now, as a whole, no, it's not a very good show. I am not gonna lie to you guys, it's not. But if you honestly want my opinion, skip the first 2 arcs and jump right into the Universal story arc. And honestly, you can probably skip some of that too and get right to the things that's going on now, where I will not spoil it for you, but someone very special comes back. But anyway, yeah, just skip those couple arcs. You can look up online, they tell you the name of the arcs. Just skip to them and you'll be happier and you'll actually love what you're watching. In my opinion, Dragon Ball Super is a solid 7 out of I don't know, 7 out of 10 right now. I think it can pick up its pace if it keeps going, but it's not the best anime in the world, and where it is now puts it in a much better place than where it started. And you have to go into it, I think, in my mind, thinking of it as a series that follows up Dragon Ball versus a series that follows up Dragon Ball Z, because it's much more alike Dragon Ball than it is Dragon Ball Z at this point. And I'll even throw this out there really quickly, guys, that I do think that Akira Toriyama doesn't care that much about this series. He just wants to make something fun because there's so many plot holes, because he just doesn't seem to put a lot of, like, I don't know, like attention to detail into things. But I'll do a bigger video on that later. But anyway, guys, thanks for watching this week's anime debate. Let me know down below if there's anything you want to see me review next or anything you want to see me compare next, and I'll be here for you to do that. I make videos about 5 times a week. Come check me out. And please, guys, help me out at Patreon. Please, guys, check out my Patreon. Hey, guys, check out my Patreon. I think I said it 3 times. All right, make it happen. Later, guys. Ever use teleport? I bet you no one checks out my Patreon. Go listen to the podcast then, you filthy animal.